to the cryptozoology show part two. I'm going to show some more convincing Bigfoot films. I think I got about four of them that we're going to cover, four or five. Um, some more water monster like things of my regions and that, and some more things about the fish with legs and that sort of thing like that that I didn't get a chance to cover in that. I made a mistake. I do this quite often because I've been to so many places all over, and that one of the films I want to comment on was not in Yellowstone. It's Yosemite National Park in California. I was there when I was younger, but I never got any stories around there except in papers or things like that, or that kind of thing. But I didn't meet any witnesses or anything. But in Yellowstone, I met a game warden, like a warden there, guy, whatever he called them. And this guy had seen a seal, and there was like old water monster reports in there and the odd Bigfoot like thing and different things like that. So uh, I said by accident Yellowstone when it's Yosemite, right? And I was thinking the poor guys walking around with these guys are shooting right? Like, but no, this I don't know. I don't think Yosemite has that. At least not that I can recall or mention of it, anyways. But so I said the wrong park, but no matter what, the evidence is still there. It's the same thing as just a different park, right? But the same idea here, and the only less danger now is there shouldn't be geysers flying up barbecuing Bigfoot. But for some reason, I don't know why, somebody had said that either in someone where it was the place was said or whatever. Somehow I got this in my mind, right? So, anyways, I apologize about that, but that'll be on there later. But still, the evidence is the same, right? Like, and that sort of thing, like that. Going to talk about this strange museum that actually has a stuffed werewolf, right? And a stuffed dragon. Now, here's the interesting thing: the stuffed werewolf. I this is made hundreds of years ago, right? So you got problems here of making something like that, like proper, right? Like the guy would really have to understand physiology and different things, right? And you didn't have rubber or any of these things to make it with. But one of the dragons, there's numerous museums that even sometimes 56 years ago had dragons in them. And conveniently, a lot of them are similar, right? Like across the board, where because of packing and stuff like that, the museum wanted it smaller. So the guy would snap off part of the wings to make it more compact to put it in the thing, right? So they actually had bigger wings than what you would see in a lot of these stuffed specimen. But my question is looking at it, there is no bat species or anything like that that even has wings like this. The mouth and head doesn't match anything that I could possibly think of. I don't have a picture here, so we're going to do another show about it. I'm still trying to find it again. But, anyways, it's in the same museum. And it's not the Chinese dragon, it's the typical more European with the little wings and that sort of thing like that. But where, in order to fool why would science guys, okay, you have to think about this in a logical way. Why would science guys write whole full books stating they exist all the way up until 1940? There was still like encyclopedias and dictionaries telling you they existed. All of a sudden, in 1 minute, every person claims that they didn't, right? And that sort of thing, which I find foolish, right? So of course they existed, and they're mentioned in the Bible. So if you're a Christian person, believe in the Bible, you should already know that dragons existed, right? So all these kinds of things. Same with alicorn, unicorn, right? It mentioned 7 times in the Bible, right? Sort of thing like that. And these morons suggesting they confuse with a rhino. I mean, every drawing's the same. There's a coin with Alexander the Great riding 3 regular horses. The fourth horse is identical, except he's darker, and he's got a great big unicorn horn in his head. And so supposedly one of his pets, Busopolis, might have been a unicorn in some accounts, right? So whatever the case, right? The point is that they existed as well, and it's just modern science claiming that they didn't, right? And that, but there's no, I haven't been able to verify this story is factual or not, and that's the problem. But there's an interesting one here that I'll show you that you will find in ancient Chinese accounts everywhere. That some of them had like antler like sort of things going on in them, and they actually found the skeleton. So we'll be talking about that sort of thing like that. Uh, some of these Bigfoot films, except one that I'm pointing out that I believe. No, actually, do I have two or one or two? Anyways, there might be like five films. One or two of them I'm pointing you out are fake. Like guaranteed, these are not real yet. They claim to be, right? But I'm showing you the difference, right? But some of them, the other ones, are really hard to believe that it's a human in a suit in any possibility or form. Therefore, they're more likely real, right? So, but anyway, so we got some interesting subjects on this one and that sort of thing. So, and we'll continue on with that. But these Bigfoot films are very convincing, and that. I finally I found that sort of a creature that I had with the feet there that the guy had described in the 1800s up on this beach, right? And that sort of thing like that. And, but interesting, this creepy museum has this sort of stuff, right? And they're really old, right? So, where would you get the parts to fool the scientist guy, and why would these scientist guys all over the world purchase dragons if they didn't believe that there was some basis to them, right? Like, I mean, why would you do that, right? Like, it's not logical at all, right? So that they truly did exist. Like I said, I don't believe, me personally, the most convincing thing to me ever was reading a Mormon monk's personal diary, and the guy said that a dragon busted into his church exactly like the same personal diary of a 15th century guy saying that the shoot dog broke in. He had eyes of flames of hell, and they speared him, and his paw marks was still in the door. All real. They found the skeleton is near 8 feet. The monstrous, way bigger than any sort of canine should be accepted, and it was real. I mean, 100%, right? So I don't believe people, these kind of Christian like guys, are going to write this in their own personal diary that nobody else is going to see. The guy said the dragon busted in, ate two of his. He didn't really say if they swallowed him or not. One of them just bit like the guy's head or something, right? And then some other thing. And then conveniently, one of the pages is missing on the next slide, right? So did somebody take this out on purpose, that there was some even more tantalizing information and that sort of thing like that? I've never been able to find this story again, right? Because you would think it would be listed under dragon because the word dragon is mentioned. The guy says dragon like about 4 or 5 times at least through the sort of thing, right? But I again, the other story was 100% fact. I don't see the same thing as very likely was the same thing, right? Like these Mormons are very serious about all kinds of stuff like this, right? And yeah, I just don't believe that this guy's going to put this in there as saying his patrons are killed right inside of a church. They apparently shooed the monster out the back door, and then it went into a field. But then, like I said, conveniently, the page is missing. So did they kill this guy? And he's buried on that thing that we can really prove a dragon existed up in the till the 18th century at least, right in the England area in Europe, right? I believe it was in England, but if it wasn't, it was some close by country, right? And that sort of thing. But anyways, so we got a lot to cover here and that sort of thing like that. But dragons existed for sure, And werewolves, my head has some problems with some of these things, but at the same token, there seems to be enough evidence out there that for sure there's something to it, right? And that sort of thing like that. So whether this is a real one, I know the 11th century one in Japan of a Japanese like dragon. I believe that to be authentic. There's nowhere the emperor gave it to them as a donation, so like the whole story fits all proper, right? And that this one's a bit more quasi. I don't know where they got this dragon from and that sort of thing like that. However, he doesn't look like any parts of any regular animal of families that you could find. Therefore, where did they get these parts, right? The only logical conclusion would be that if it isn't fake, right? Like I would love to go to this museum and get them to agree to let us, you know what I mean, get some guy. And I'm not going to pick because I don't trust a lot of these guys. I find it very convenient how many times that they send off some kind of thing and the guy will send it back a bear or everything. I think some government agency has told them this is what you put, and if you don't, funding shut off or you might be in jail or whatever, right? This is security international sort of thing that I wouldn't be surprised because there's certain things that seems very suspicious, right? Like yeah. So but anyway, so we'll continue on and that sort of thing like that. So again, Yellowstone, Yosemite, right? Like I mean this and I've been to both of these parks, right? So I mean, yeah. Anyways, I switched it by somehow that sort of thing like that. But I think the original story that I seen, I could have sworn that the guy had put Yellowstone, and that's why I thought that, right? But anyways, it doesn't matter. There's similar like parks. California is right near these states. They're all similar like stuffs, kinds of mountain ranges and everything else, and any of these creatures would meander through any of these ones, right? Like and that sort of thing like that. So, but anyways, we'll continue on. I wanted to comment on this film. This is very similar to like the creature I saw in Kickapoo Creek in the 70s. And I don't believe this is a kid in a suit. It's muscular, you see, at the speed that it does and the fluidity, and it's doing it on all fours, sort of stuff there. It's not a person in a suit, yeah, in the highest likelihood. So we'll take a look at this here and see if we can freeze the frame in the right spot. You can see him there, the last bit of him, he's going through on the right hand side, right at the edge of the tree. And if you notice, the tree has a strange anomaly. It almost looks like a human being's face. It's got pareidolia there, right? But in this case, that isn't pareidolia. The guy has reddish brown fur. He's leaping on all fours and running on all twos a few times, and that sort of thing like that. And the speed of him is way faster though than what a little kid could do. And because of the muscular definitions and things like that, I think this guy actually got even a rarer subject, a more juvenile, or these mini foot groups that exist as well, right? They're just not seen as much probably because they're smaller. They hide better from us, but we'll look at it a bit more here. It's very difficult to get this creature because he's so fast. Okay, so we're not going to go beyond this part because then it'll be just a mass annoyance and puts it on stupid screens that have nothing to do with anything, right? It's very difficult to get this guy, but if you watch this and freeze it many times, you'll see the little dude skirting through there, a bunch of trees that he goes through in microseconds, right? So there's something very interesting about this film. It's impossible, seemingly, to get this guy properly. Not one frame can I find where I can get the guy, so we'll start it at the beginning again. See if we can get there. Oh, okay, so that's the best place to do this, would be at the beginning. Okay. There he got more of them in this time, but okay, so right there, we got him in the center finally, right? Like, look at the speed of that guy, right? So, and he's fully covered with brownish red fur. It looks completely like nobody in a suit here. The movements are spectacular. It's got a muscular little back, and you could even see its rump there at one point, and that sort of thing like that. So I'd say this is another winner. It's very unlikely this is a person in a suit, and an actual authentic of a more juvenile sort of Sasquatch like sort of thing going on there, right? Here's another one that people go on and claiming it's real. I find this ridiculous. The guy's got some kind of, like, what do you call them? Their Jason Voorhees mask on, right? Of some sort. I mean, it's totally everything about this. The guy's arms, the length, and everything, and the funny face and everything. It's very the muscular definition doesn't even match from one side to the next, right? Like so, I just really doubt this. We'll play it for a quick second because it's a very short film, but I really doubt this to be authentic, right? So and you can see this sort of like, I mean, it's just a poor suit quality of some sort. Uh, I'm not a fan of this at all. I mean, all of these are normal human movements. The arm length is again short, and that sort of thing like that. So I'd say in the highest probability this is a fake one, sort of thing. I, I wanted to comment on this film. A lot of people go on saying it's a real Bigfoot and that sort of thing like that. I don't believe so at all. Several features you can actually see where up his head is. There's a bit of a neckish area there, longer than typical in that. And look at how short that the guy's arms are compared to down to his knees and that sort of thing like that. So unless he's a feral human of more modern times or some mixture, he's not a typical Sasquatch anyways, right? Like, but in the highest probability, the way this guy's walking and everything and that sort of thing like that, this guy is this is a fake suit. So we'll just do this for a second here. Okay. So there again, you can see how short his arms are, right, and that sort of thing like that. So in this case, I believe this to be fraudulent, or even if the person didn't purposely fraudulent like them who's filming it, they were tricked, right, by a person in a ghillie suit and that sort of thing, right? So I mean, very likely, unless again it's a very this rare feral human phenomena where some family is raised it, but it allows him to run out the woods and that sort of thing like that. And he's got hypertrichosis, but that's not very likely in this kind of cold terrain and all that sort of. So it's just more likely than not, this is just a person in a ghillie suit, right? So very very interesting. But we'll look at the next one here. Hey folks, I want to comment about this. Fellow was out biking of some sort or whatever, right? It's Florida, Georgia swamp sort of stuff here, the southern U.S. here. And this guy is going along and he hears this like ripping and snapping. Now, I don't have it on the film because I had to cut it down because everybody that hosts this, they're always blabbing over it, right? And I want to talk about different things that people aren't mentioning, right? Okay, this guy is ripping like big rips pieces of wood out of a tree trunk. Okay, and he's looking for something, some kind of food. You see hear this hundreds and hundreds of reports and many films of similar where the guy's digging around some kind of tree stump of some sort, right? So they could be looking for moles. I have no idea, like different sorts of things, right? But whatever the case is, some kind of worms. I saw that survivor guy was digging in some weird old trunk like thing and he was eating these disgusting giant worms. And I mean, I got to give that guy credit. I wouldn't eat that like no matter how many days that I'm starving, that wouldn't be going in my mouth. So I got to give him real credit there. I mean, you would think that there's got to be some kind of plant that you could buy that would, suffice until you buy something better. I mean, I've seen this guy, he's eating squirrels and everything else, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of stuff I just don't like doing, right? I've always, when I was out in the wilderness, I got lost before. I survived fish wise, right? Because there were streams and things around it, right? And that sort of thing like that. But not I've not done that sort of things, right? And I don't want to hurt the poor little bunny rabbit guy or anything, right? So like a fish, I can sacrifice a fish out of a nice clean stream, right? It's not going to wipe him out and that sort of thing like that. But I feel bad about any of them, right? I'd rather let them go. But I mean, so I'd rather eat berries and things like that if I could find them, right? But not always can you, right? And that sort of thing like that. And I mean, luckily, one time I followed this old thing that the guy had said that moss would grow on the northern side of a tree quite often, right? But I found out later that that isn't always the case, right? It's only like maybe half the time, and that it could be other sort of directions that is growing, right? So it's not an infallible sort of a methodology, right? So I got lucky one time using this sort of method, right? but I mean, I found my way back to a road, right, and all that sort of thing. But I mean, it's just I don't like doing that sort of thing. So I'll give that survivor guy credit there, and that sort of this. But I believe this to be. I heard the squeal monster snapping off these things, and when humans are pulling on this sort of stuff like that, because the strength is hard to get the last little bit, it's very rare you're going to get any kind of a snap like this kind of stuff. This guy is much more powerful than us and is ripping great big chunks. Humans doing it, they got to keep yanking at it and the sound is different. This is clear snaps where there's no pause, there's no that last little thing. So I find this authentic in this sort of way. And that a truck was nearby on a forest road somewhere off, and the guy slams the door, then the Bigfoot comes up. So let's look at this here and just sort of thing. And you'll see that it's I believe this to be a legitimate sort of film here. You can see the creature. He's there. He's digging something, right? His arms are quite long too. You can't though because he doesn't really like. I haven't found a spot that I can fully prove that his arms are beyond his knees, but he looks more authentic than not to me, even in the gorilla-ish like way. And this is one of these ones from the south, right? He's not our typical Bigfoot. These skunk apes are smaller and they're more orangutanish, gorillish like sort of guys typically, right? And that sort of thing like that. So, but you're going to see the guy stand up there. I'm trying to stop this, but I don't know. There. Okay. So you can see that he's got a pointed cranium. It looks like his head's built right in there. He looks quite muscular. The tree, and this is the guy actually runs away. Here, we'll see that in a second, or we might have already. I was trying to find the spot, but whatever the case, the guy then realized what he's really looking at, and he panicked and took off, which I can't blame him. Like I said, I'm not a believer that the every one of these are the Harry and the Henderson nice guys, right? I think that sometimes they kill people or captured and raped them and other things, right? Like, so I know that's not a popular opinion, but just like any other wild human, a gorilla, one gorilla will to work with the person for a decade and it's all fine and they're chummy and everything, but then the next one could just snap in a second, right, and rip your head right off, right? So it's all been done before by trainers that trusted the creature, and all of a sudden they snap someday, right? So you don't know the same thing, right? This is wild humans to some kind of wild gorilla-ish, half-ish human, like sort of creatures that are out there of different mixtures, right? And this Florida skunk ape for sure exists. I found footprints myself. I mean, if you saw the woods that this creature went through, right, and it's completely off of any sort of, yeah, there was a road there that you could, but there was pathways in other areas. Why wouldn't the person pick that? So where do you find somebody with giant footprints that wants to crush through the bush in the hopes that some idiot like me is going to find this, right? Not likely, right? He goes down to St. John's River. You can see his feet change and he drinks down water. And then he went back in the bush. And they look quite fresh to me. I wasn't about to go back in that bush, right? I was petrified. So I went right through the same area that I went through. And that, so I seen these my own self, like, I know they weren't bear tracks, right? Like, it looked fully human, like, except way wider, right? Like, and everything, the toes, and you actually see the toes positioned different in different spots. So that it couldn't have been a wooden foot, right? And again, who's going to do this? Like, it's you have to push your way through bush to find this little spot, right? And it was very small, and it goes back to a forest that leads to the big cypress, swampy forest on the other side, right? So this creature just was going down there for water, I presume. This was in the later 70s, and that. And so, anyways, I show that on my other one of my shows. I got some funny Bigfoot movies and things like that. And I love this song. The guys down in Florida there. Looking for Bigfoot, and this guy wrote this song, like something. I think it's Cactus Jack or whatever, right? This guy's magnificent, one of the greatest voices ever, right? But anyways, sort of thing like that. He even sang with Johnny Cash and different ones, right? So he was well known in that, but sadly they didn't seemingly make like a full cut of the song, right? And it's a very good song on St. John's ground. It sounds great, right? Like it has this bit of a native-y almost thing to it too, right? And that sort of thing like that. But anyways, so I even myself have had a run in with what I probably was a Florida skunk ape of some sort, right? Certainly wasn't a bear. It had no claws. The feet were huge, and this sort of thing like that. I remember they were really wide, right? Like pressed in. But mind you, maybe the mud pushes a little bit. These things I don't know, right? Like, but I mean, it still was an experience that made me believe even more, right? Like that kind of thing, right? Because of the odds of that, right? But in the original film, right? Okay, if you can look that, if you see it online and that sort of thing like that, you'll hear the guys snapping in their complete perfect snaps, like snap, 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 not like and then yanking and stuff like that to break the last little part of it off, right? Because that's how powerful these guys are, right? So this guy, even the blurriness at the end of him running and everything, again, I would have backed off and just kept backing off further and further away from this guy. Then finally decide to pull to the car, right, sort of thing like that, or whatever, right, to the bike or whatever he was doing, right. Anyways, I believe this in the highest probability is likely a real Sasquatch and not a guy in a fake ghillie suit or anything like that because of just the sheer size of him compared to the huge stump, the muscular features on him. I see no neck there. All of a sudden he comes up, you see that he's reaching way in there, digging around for something, and the snapping he's doing and his big hands and everything, like when you're seeing the guy going there. I don't know, I in the more probability it's actually real than not, right? Like, so, and I mean, you know, so another interesting film that probably is more likely, I wouldn't give it the Patterson film credibility here and that, but I would still say it's the highest probability authentic. So we'll look at the next one. I wanted to comment on this film by accident. I've called it several times Yellowstone National Park there, but it's Yosemite, which I've been to as well. So, anyways, we'll get this clear. There is no. There could be geysers around there. I've never heard of any, but I mean, there could be. And I remember that in Yosemite, but not there. But this film was taken by uh, government officials that put this out there to monitor the wildlife and that. And so here's the problem: there's no roads, there's no anything for quite some distance, right? Nobody mentions this much, but you actually see the bison. They must be aware that the creatures are coming because they move position, right? And then all of a sudden they show up. There's actually 4 of them on the film. And if you compare them to the bison and that of height wise and everything, there's no way these dudes aren't like 7 foot to maybe 9 foot in range here, sort of thing, right? Could be a little bit taller, a little bit, yeah, give or take a few inches or even a foot, depending on how big these bison were, right? And that sort of thing. But this film is one of the most convincing films for multi reasons. It's a government thing. There's 4 of them. Where could you find actors from 7 to 9 feet tall? You know what I mean? Where convenient that they can all keep quiet and somehow meander out through miles of forest away from roads or anything, and then not be concerned that these bison might turn on them and run them over and flatten them like a piece of you know what, right? Like this has happened, right? So you can't. I would think that if you're an actor pulling a stunt, that you couldn't be this stupid to really be doing this. Like, I mean, also it's freezing out and everything else, right? Like these guys would have had to been really well insulated. And why then does 3 of them vanish? Because they're hidden in behind this tree, heading probably to this next group of trees in behind it, so you don't see them. They get out of sight. But one of them comes out. Is that a common thing? Do they look like one's a scout like thing, or were they figuring out some way of getting one of these bison? Who knows, right? But anyways, look at this for a bit, and you'll see, if you look at 3/4 of the screen on the right hand side, look in between the clearings of the trees, and you'll see the 4 of these dudes coming along. And I mean, if you analyze all of this, and the fact that where could you get actors stupid enough even to go out there and risk themselves like that? There's other creatures, I'd imagine. Probably, I don't know if they're fully extinct in that region or not. Yeah, bears, grizzly bear, and that sort of thing like that. So I'm not sure of that, but I mean, there would be things, right, like wolves and other kinds of creatures that I find this really hard to believe. Like, I mean, there's no roads around for quite some time, right, and all that sort of thing. where would you get this group, and how come they haven't get like not every time people claim it's a guy in a ghillie suit, best none of these people ever come forward. I mean, if it was me that I fooled the world that I could make one as good as the Patterson film or the Ape Man from Russia and that sort of thing like that, just to brag, right? That I fooled the world, right? You would think that some of them would do this, right? Like, but you don't see this ever. And even if they make these claims like they did on the Patterson film, there was probably about 9, 10 guys, different ones that claim this, and none of them could provide anything except one guy had a crummy old gorilla suit from the 1940s that he bought in some junkyard or a pawn shop or something, right? And that sort of thing. So I mean, it wasn't the Patterson ape, anyways, right? So no matter what, yeah, these like, but besides that, you don't really see this much, right? So it makes you wonder. I mean, any other phenomena, the guy, if it's a secret clown or this or like a lot of them will, put themselves forward, right? They need the attention, worship me, just like on the Seinfeld there, when Jerry's in the mink coat there, and all that stuff, and Kramer's going away, right? Like, going on, and that sort of thing is similar like this, right? There's a lot of people like this. So you would think with the gazillions of reports, there'd be more of these people where they could actually claim this. Like, I'm even suspect there's one where everybody now claims that there was this werewolf guy and he runs along, right? And all of a sudden, this guy comes from outer space and he makes this claim, but he didn't have the suit anymore provided that he could show, or that he can even do this. He's never done this, not that I'm aware of, that I've seen on any of the things. It's just him making a claim. I could say I was the guy in the werewolf suit, right? And even some people looked at it and said the movement seemed to be really difficult for a human to be able to be doing. And that's so. How do you know? Just like there was a one where the guy claimed that he was this Bigfoot walking up a mountain, and it was just him, and it was a hot day, so he decided to take off his shirt, and that all this stuff is all BS. The guy couldn't. He had a 1 in 30 probability of guessing the right date that he was out, supposedly to match this film and picture, right, of this Bigfoot creature climbing up a great big mountain. And he completely got it off by a completely over a month difference, right? So it couldn't have been him in the thing, right? So there's people that do this. They want to also, as far as I know, I'm on the fence of that film until this guy could show that whatever. I don't really know what that werewolf like thing is running towards it, if it is a person in a suit or not. If it is, it's a very strange suit, and he did a magnificent job of the speed and everything else, right? But just because this guy claims this, like I said, instantly the whole internet believes him, and then that's the end of it. But the guy, as far as I know, has never provided any proof of whatsoever below zero. Right? So I mean, that's, you could say these things, right? And it's an old film too, right? Then the guy made up some kind of, so I don't know. Like, I mean, it could be, right, that maybe he's telling the truth, but maybe not, right? Like, so this is until the guy can actually show the suit 100% that it's the same suit, not someone that he decides to try and make now to copy it, right? And that, like, and that he can get in there and do the same things, right? Well, then yeah, then you've solved the mystery, right? I have no problem with that. I think that'd be great. That's one less film to even talk about or look at, right? But there's some quasi things about that I've never seen any evidence of this guy with the suit or any of the stuff provided. So he's just a scapegoat, and then he like makes himself look intelligent to the whole world, how he fooled the world. But maybe this guy had below zero to do with anything, wasn't even there, or any of this stuff, right? Like, so you don't know those things, right? But it was let's look at this here, and it's quite interesting. Okay, so now watch. All of a sudden, these guys move, right? Why did they move? Why, when they were sitting there all this time quiet, why all of a sudden do they move, right? So now look in between the spaces. Can you see them? They're walking there now. And each guy is taller than the next, right? Almost pretty well. Okay, now another thing that people don't mention much that I find strange, this guy walks different than the other three. Okay, so he walks different than the other three, and if you compare him to the size of these bison, there's no way this guy's under the 7 foot range, sort of thing, right? And he could even be a little bit bigger. So he's the smallest one, or the second smallest one. There's another one in there that's a bit shorter too, but there's a big, tall, giant, lanky mother that's got to be way top 8 foot something to 9 foot something range, and that and there's four of them. So where do you get four actors in a wildlife reserve with government officials monitoring all the time? They go out there, these bison could turn on them in a second and destroy them, right? And that sort of thing like that. It's very suspicious, right? So Yosemite National Park is one of the sort of older parks, right? It's been around for quite a long time. I think Yellowstone was actually the first one. That's why I always get these guys confused, Yellowstone, Yosemite, and they're similar looking, right? Like in some ways, right? And all that sort of thing, right? But the thing is that these bison move, and I find that interesting that they notice them, right? So is this guy a scout looking for, any kind of dangers, and the other one's single file? This could be that families of Bigfoot do this. I mean, like in the old Star Wars, they walk single file, right? The little dudes with the robes there, right? They walk single file, right? And that to hide their numbers. Maybe Sasquatch does a similar like thing. I've heard this proposed by several people in the past, right? That it's feasible, right? Well, here's an indication. And if you notice, if you look at them, they were all in a straight line. So it could be. And they're really this intelligent that just because they're a primitive human, to ape man of some sort, right? Whatever. And like I said, there's different sorts of these, right? And could be combinations, right? Like if these four found Katy Perry and she was on skiing, right? And they've seen her, they might like her, right? So if they did do something with her, right, she might end up having some kind of half sort of where you'll inherit some of the modern human sort of things, but also maybe some of this chipman stuff, right? So this kind of thing like that would occur, and this has occurred. Like I showed you the ape man in Morocco, the Iran guy, both of the ladies claimed they were raped by a caveman. Both of them claimed the guy was monstrous and full of fur, right? And completely, that guy looks like a Sasquatch, right? The other guy didn't inherit as much fur, but he got great big patches, and you see that in some native groups that say the same thing. So, I mean, if you add it all up, obviously, Sasquatch is human enough to seemingly mate with regular individuals, right? So that's why sometimes when I go into the Gigantopithecus thing, even though they look very apish and everything like that, they may still be more human than what we think, right? And that sort of thing like that. And as far as I know, maybe it's possible that even a gorilla and some other primitive human of some sort could mate, like, or any of that kind of stuff, right? These things I don't know, but however that they occurred, for sure some of them were hairy feral humans that were born of some tribes person or whatever, right? And then if there's enough of these guys and they escape and live out a cave-like man environment, and then they seduce or jump some poor maiden coming by, or fellow or whatever, both has occurred, well, then you could have strange offspring that may, and only the ones that would inherit most of the stuff needed is going to survive, right? So then this gene would pass on to the next one and the next one and the next one. But I believe this film to be fully, I can't really see how you're going to get some guys to be not frozen to death out in some ridiculous suits, 7 to 9 foot plus tall range. Why the bison didn't turn around on them and nail them, right? Because if they really do fear and know what a Sasquatch is, right? Because they've seen them before, well, then they know how to deal with them, right? And as far as I know, that guy's looking and trying to figure out some way of maybe them all circling around one and getting one or whatever, right? Like a lot of people don't like to hear that. They want to hear, they think of the Harry and the Henderson version, right? But in order to feed a great ape like giant human like creatures, right? They got to have chow. So besides berries and all the different things, the fish and the different stuff throughout the season, if it's scarcer times, they may go after some larger prey like this. And there's gazillions of reports of them killing deer and things like that, right? And that sort of thing like that. So this is a very, very convincing film in every way, shape, or form, and it's a winner. I really and if it was fake thing too, I mean, if you went through all this trouble, why didn't the all four of them come out here and go like this and the bison to run away, hopefully that they don't charge at them, right? Like why didn't any of this, you wouldn't even notice these guys unless you're really looking for it, right? So this is like to me, if you think of the odds of finding four actors 7 to 9 foot plus tall that are stupid enough that could agitate a I don't know what these things weigh, but I'm sure they weigh like 1,000 pounds to two, some giant cows do or other things, right? So, I'm sure they can get a pretty decent big size to them, right? So, and they also have that bumpy back, like more than what regular sort of a thing. So you have to add some height to there and that. And when you see the Bigfoot guy compared to them, right? I mean, you can clearly see that to find four actors that can walk, and why is three of them walking normal? You don't see the other three limping, but you see that guy, right? So I think he had some kind of injury there. But it looks like a not a person trying to fake something. Like it looks like, and I mean, this is, you don't know the depths of this snow. There's no way that these guys, even if they had a buddy that worked on there and they got all this fake film arranged somehow, they're going to drop you off in a helicopter, you transport yourself out here, do all this stuff. You don't know like what the snowdrifts would be and everything. The guy could fall into a pit or who knows, right? So. I find this like very unlikely. You're going to be able to find four actors to keep their mouth shut all this time since, and be able to go through such terrain like that seemingly easily, and even with a guy with a messed up foot. And why put the messed up foot in? I mean, what really is that going to add any great authenticity to it? A lot of people will say that that looks like a guy just hopping there to pretend that, you could use it that way, right? So, I mean, anyways, it's a very convincing film. If you had any sort of, even the Joe Nichols guys out there, ask park rangers, would they just walk up and say hi bison and start trying to pet them? No, and nobody's going to do that, and they can't be this dumb. I mean, if you got these great suits and they seem to, you even see muscular like features as it's going through, so you got four great suits, great big expense, a government that's going to collect cash from it, not anybody else, right? And that's like, you see what I mean? There's a lot of problems with this, right? So, anyways, I find this very more likely on the authentic side that it's an actual real Sasquatch film. So, congratulations to these government people. I mean, I don't know what more to say. I see the bison moving from these guys. I see them like seemingly know they're there, readjust themselves to stay at a certain distance that they can escape and do their chowing, whatever they're doing, right? And again, the four actors, why does three of them And why is they all in a single file like that? That shows to me intelligence are trying to hide their numbers, like I said, right? And that sort of thing, like old Star Wars, right? So, very interesting. Anyways, fantastic film. And so we'll look at some other ones here. Wanted to talk about this hilarious story that I forgot about. I interviewed these three people, and they told me when Trudeau first started out, so it was somewhere earlier 2000 to mid 2000 range, somewhere in there, right? I've lost the regular account of it. It's in some paper somewhere, right? But I remember quite well because I was laughing so much. It's just like, but these two really close buddies there, they'd always hang out, that were from Cantley area and that, right? They'd hang out with this real character named Bob, and all of these guys are like super Quebecers sort of people, right? Sort of thing like that. And the English is, yeah, not the greatest, right? And that sort of thing like that. And so, but they're really nice people. And they told me one of the most funniest stories ever. The Bob guy had decided to drive them out to this Minks Lake there, and there's this wild beach there, right, where like nudist is optional, sort of thing, like that sort of idea, right? I don't know if it's still like this, but this is ages ago, right? So at the time, that's what people were doing, right? And they were there, sitting there and enjoying themselves and all that sort of stuff, getting the suntan as the ladies do, right? And the all of a sudden this commotion out in the water came, and this creature that looks similar to this guy here, the Jean-Guy sent it. I don't know where he got this, but he claims it's the Vanier mermaid man from the local pool around Vanier, but I doubt this. But I don't know where this came from, but pretty funny anyways. But the creature was something like this, and he had exactly the same face as Justin Trudeau's. So they said he was like gold, like some kind of gold merman like suit, right? And just had a tail. And the creature came out and then sat there and then started, lit up a giant reaper, and then got himself out of some kind of cooler like thing that he had laying up on the beach. Got himself a big quart of Laurentide. It's some, super Quebecois like sort of beer, right? So I fully believe in this because I could see all of this, right? I would. So they said that he had like a beer belly on him back then, right? And he was, burping and smoking this thing, right? So they got nervous of him because he kept leering at them, right? So they decided to leave and take off with the Bob guy. But the guy had like some kind of weird, besides like the suit like thing, right? He actually had some kind of thing wrapped around like his waist that would look like a thong of some sort, right? And it was pink, right? So I mean, right out there, right? So what, like, was this some early person, a fan of Trudeau's or something out there? Was that really Trudeau? Was that a real mermaid, that merman sort of creature that happens to look like Trudeau? So, anyways, I'm liking it anyways. So, if you have any stories from the Minks Lake mermaid there, or any other strange, anomaly that you're seeing out there, I'd certainly love to hear it, right? Because I'm loving this one. I've forgotten all about it, and then all of a sudden, they one of them was a witness. She saw a Black Panther around her sort of area where she lives, right? And so did the other one, but she wasn't sure if it was a cougar or a Black Panther because it was really dark, right? Several witnesses I've talked to over the years, they say it was really black, right? But kind of cougarish looking, right? So it could be that there's more of this sort of thing that goes on occasionally, right? Or maybe they, in ancient times, when more of these pets were released out the wild by people when they're before the laws of the 60s, right? And onward up, right? They, some of these might have crossbred with them of some sort, right? Or this kind of thing, right? Because jaguars were before, like were known to be seen, and even in today's times, there's still reports of this, but like California and a few states bordering it, right, and that sort of thing like that, right. So I mean, any of these things are peaceful, right? So, but I'm looking this Trudeau mermaid man monster there. So I wonder if there's a whole fleet of them there, right, and that sort of thing like that. So, but anyways, they said thank goodness he wasn't naked and he was just in this thing, but they said that he needed to get out, work out at the gym, and his pot was pretty big, like this fellow's there, right? so, so very interesting. Another strange cryptid out there. We have, the Loch Ness monster. I find him extremely entertaining. I like the idea of, right, that sort of thing like that. So he's out there, but my last some lady saw him in Britannia Bay. Monica or Melissa. Anyway, a couple of them with these kinds of names sent me in a story, and funniest thing ever, right? This girl's like a model, right? And this Loch Ness monster guy came out there and upset her, blocking her tan, and he smelled and everything, right? So here's some strange things that are out in our waters that maybe part human that have issues of some sort, right? Mentally speaking, right, or whatever, right? So, but maybe this was like early Trudeau trying to get himself out there, like, and then he went back to the gym and kept practicing his boxing and all that sort of stuff, right? There's an hilarious one. He got mad at some politician guy and he shoots all across the stage and puts up his dukes, right? Like, I mean, any other prime minister in history, they would have, the guy would have lost like right away. They would have, told him to resign, right? Like that's acting like a 4-year old where you're wanting to, put up your dukes and actual getting a real fist fight over some disagreement in politics, right? But I mean, they let him go with this because of his youngness, right, and all that sort of thing like that. So I mean, they might have even forgave him more if he had came out in the mermaid outfit. You can't be anti-merman or mermaid sort of stuff, right? Like in today's time, sort of thing, right? But it was very interesting. I haven't a clue. That's the only sighting I've ever gotten from this mermaid monster. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's out there. so, so I like the idea of, anyways. There, I want to go to Minks Lake myself there and see what kind of characters are really out there, right? Because that sounds pretty entertaining, right? You could get one of these creatures on film here. Could you imagine if it really was like a merman somehow that, because like I told you, that fellow that I knew that was from some kind of island around the Bahamas sort of area, right? And that who's now a coach, right? And everything. He saw this merman monster guy and everybody knows about him. Like the guy will walk out into the surf and he looks like a normal human, and then he'll get these scales and all this sort of wacky stuff, right? So I mean, that's pretty chameleon-ish, like, right? Like, I mean, sort of thing. And the guy can stay underwater, and I mean, this guy was really serious, right? Like super super serious, that he watched all this, and this guy was underwater like seemingly endless amounts of times, 10, 20, 30 minutes at a time, and the guy would come up sometimes with a fish and be chewing on it. Then he would leave and the scales would fall off of him, right? So, wackiest thing I've ever, I mean, but because he's such a good witness and the guy's like Christian minded, he wasn't telling me big tales all day and night, right? And all that sort of thing. I mean, what do you say, right? Like, I mean, so is there races out there of people that have some kind of abilities that we don't understand, right? That, like, I mean, there's people been born with horns and all kinds of stuff, right? So, I mean, there was these Talcumay people that could apparently live underwater, right? I showed you the three cutie pies Talcumay ladies there, right? So, like I said, they'd make a good wife, and that's sort of thing like that. But whatever the case, I mean, there's some strange sort of things out there. But the Trudeau Ness Minks Lake Monster here is an all-time classic, so I'm loving it. So, anyways, we'll continue on. You talk next here about this 1800s collector. This guy was related to like a lot of famous sort of early sort of guys that were all into paleontology and different things, right? And this guy had this massive collection that he collected for like 50, 60 years, right? Of different things. And some of them, the people said, oh, they must be fraudulent and this and that. But this guy has so much of collections and things, and it matches some of the other museum like sort of thing ones that were showing in old photos and things like that. So my question is that if you really believe these Smithsonian Institution people that thousands and thousands of years that all these cultures from the Vikings where they put them on their ships to everything, right? Mormon monks' diaries to the list is endless here. That these European kind of dragons still existed up until at least about the 1800s, okay? But were already rare by about the 1400s, right? Now, this is why these specimens were difficult to collect. They were getting harder and harder and harder to find, right? But my question is that do you really believe that the scientist was this stupid that each time that the guy conveniently, has the same anatomical features, there was different ones, right? Some have like wings, but what they would do for the museum is they would actually cut them off or they busted off, but they would it's seemingly that they were ordering them this way, that the guy would cut off some of the wing and make it like even so that way they could, display it properly and stuff instead of these giant wings. So this is where some of the ideas of that the dragon wouldn't have been able to fly because his wings were too small, but no, this is more to do with this sort of thing that the specimens just it was very difficult. Apparently, they would dry out fast and different things, right? So, like, where would you find, like, as a for instance, in this guy's collection, right? This is very anatomically strange here. Like, I mean, I don't know of any creature whatsoever that would remotely even fit into this except a dragonish like thing, right? So, where did the guys get the parts to fool the museum people to make them pay big bucks for this, right? And there's some that actually have that were dried that the leather and the things on it. I've seen a few of those, right? And an ancient one from the 11th century from Japan that the emperor himself donated. So why would an emperor make a fake dragon to donate to a museum, the earliest museum in history, like 11th century here, that's still around, right? Okay, they actually still have this thing, and he looks exactly like the Chinese like one that they show in the parades and stuff like that. They were funny looking. They had these little antenna like things on them and stuff like that, and this little not Fu Manchu thing, but like this little sort of dewlaps that would be underneath, right? Like underneath his chin, right, and stuff like that. Some of them, but there was many varieties in ancient books. They all described the different varieties, so it was a whole family of these characters, and because they were the giant ones it could be that they didn't even mate or have eggs or whatever until like certain amount of time, right? Like maybe 50, 100 years, who knows, right? Maybe a slow growing creature, the different ones. And the big ones, of course, would be considered a threat. Kings and everybody wanted to have one as anything to capture one, to kill it, to use its body parts for medicine, fresh to that. And another thing, even in ancient pharmacies, you clearly see the guy put uh, where you would use a old dragon's tooth or a new one, right? Indicating that the creature was around very recent, right? And that sort of thing like that. They simply, by the time that the Smithsonian gang was around and all these kind of stuff, and the Darwinism thing, these guys kind of are living dinosaurs, right? There was whole groups of them, right? And that sort of thing. You had a legless kind, you have a serpent kind that are in the water, sort of thing like that, that are usually legless, okay, and that sort of thing like that. You have a kind that just two legs to four legs sometimes, right? And this is all common in lizards sometimes and weird things like that. You'll get these anomalies. So all this is fully believable in the general sense of the term, right? And but what designated them different, their teeth, a lot of ones were described that they had swine-like teeth with some kind of weird curvature to them, right? And that sort of thing like that. And here's a recent one, Discover Asia there. Now, I'm suspect of anything in modern times, right? But I mean, this guy in ancient times, there was a dragon like creature, numerous ones that were land walkers that had just like four legs, right? A sort of thing, 4 feet, whatever you want to call it, right? And some of them had these antler-like sort of things, almost like a deer, which is very strange, right? But nevertheless, you can clearly see in this here that you have something like this, right? So if this is real, right, that they claim that this is 2,000 years old, then the layer that it was found completely in the realm of man here. We'd all agree on that, biblical to every other group, the scientist guy, anybody, right? And where do you have? Why is this specimen here very similar to a 14th century drawing that you can find of useless Ulysses? He was this famous sort of guy, and this guy did thousands of these animals and put them like stuffed them and all that kind of stuff, right? So he was a very credited scientist, and the guy, this Italian guy, beat the thing with a stick, a small baby dragon, right? So maybe one of the like already super rare, right? So what happened is that early Europeans, you go out, same with China, Japan, any of these countries, there's only so many caves. And once they first ran across these guys, these mighty dragons, that's when they were really common, right? But then they started hunting them themselves and fearing them and everything else like that. So within centuries here, these guys dropped from a major problem to almost obscurity, where they're willing to pay a fortune for one, like even museums and stuff, because they're starting to get rare, right? So I don't believe that some guy's going to spend mass fortunes here. Why is it that the skeletons quite often are very similar, right? And where would you get these animal parts? There's no rubber then, right? Or any of this stuff. Some of them are like actually dried out, right? Where if you look at the wings, I mean, they don't match any bat on this planet. They're too big even to be the only thing that could remotely be in this sort of a range of flying foxes and stuff, from the Philippines and ones like that. And there is this photo out there that shows that they possibly can get like over 10 feet plus here widthwise across, right? Bigger than what's accepted. But the thing is that it's very unlikely, like if the sources where they were getting these things from were from other countries, usually like Asia, Africa was common, and some of that, and then they've seemed to have vanished in South America, Africa, at a certain point, like a 16th, 17th century here, they seem to be getting rarer and rarer, and same with unicorns, alicorns, right? So I mean, but there's real physical, including all I'm saying is that you didn't have rubber in the 17th century from a museum, right? So how is it that the guys all together where you would see that they sew different parts together, right? Yet it's a full physical body with wings and everything, right? And they're very different from any of these, like a flying fox or normal bats or anything like that, right? And the face is very typical dragonish, like sort of stuff going on here, right? So I believe, including a photograph that I showed you on another one of my shows, right, where they found this dead one, and this guy's probably about at least 15 to 20 feet long, maybe a little bit longer. He's got a ridge spike on his back, exactly like they showed, the same kind of a face, right? And everything. The only thing you can't see is his teeth. But whatever he was, somebody, a certain amount of people out of 100 would say that was a dragon, right? So again, dragons were many things. They were different kinds of huge lizards, right? But you had your Asian kinds, right? And that, but these European kinds were funnier, right? The Asian kinds had a bigger mouth on them and things like that, and could apparently swallow human beings very easily, right? And that sort of thing like that. But the ones in the European quite often only the odd one was big enough to do this sort of thing. A lot of times it just had a much smaller head on them and that sort of thing like that. And all these countries, once the emperor guy wants one, once the king guy wants, some specimens, people are hunting them for cures and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't take long for any creature. There's only so many caves, right? And there was crazy people then that were pretty ingenuity, that were much more out in the forest like people, that could go in these caves and probably knew how to catch a dragon somehow, just like there's that account I told you, the wall dragon, where the bones are still there. They're not fossil bones. They can't be massively old, right? So what on earth, some scientists guess it could be like a brontosaurus or something, right? But no matter what, that's still a dragon like monster in a cave, right? That was in existence, right? And that sort of thing like that. The guy's bones are right there. There's a plaque in another town, 16th century. The town was made because they were going through looking for some place to habitat, right? A big group of them. And they ran across this monster, and he was a dragon. They speared him and did all this stuff and finally killed him. And they decided that this was a good fortune for them. And they made the town surrounding from around that, right? So you really believe all these people are even going to make plaques and ancient statues? Why is the statue from a native guy or a plaque the same as a guy in Asia? And all over the world, the same dragon like stuff, right? So you prefer to believe some idiot in the Smithsonian that wasn't alive in those eras, right? And that follows this fossilized layer stuff, which is again proven multi times over now that there's anomalies with this stuff, right? Like any person that believes that a hammer made out of lead is 400 million years old and that people were around 400 million years ago. Could you imagine the characters like in India, right? There's like, I don't know, like a million people probably born every day, right? So there's a lot of action going on in some countries, right? Of smooching and all that sort of stuff, right? So can you imagine that if 400 million years ago that some advanced civilized early humans were around, right? And they started mating and all this planet would be covered a zillion times over with bones up to the skies, right? We've never, there's no way that we or any creatures have been around for millions of years on this planet. This planet is much of a younger sort of thing, right? It might have been washed before, but this planet is like 15,000 and less sort of years here, not these mass millions that they claim, right? But anyways, even if you want to agree or disagree with all that, the point is that there is multi of these still around, that like in regular museums where the Smithsonian was, gave them a threatening letter. All these things disappeared by about the 1940s, right? With rare exceptions in Europe and some places where they didn't reach their big claw and go out to them, right? But I mean, still, there's these things out there now. There's a lot of these fake dragon ones now, and everything. I mean, I can't believe how much silliness is going on now. Even my most recent show, I did again, right? If you guys watch, you'll see it will show I had. The first day, I think 28 sort of views, right, or something like that, and then it's dropped down. Now it stays at 20, right? Right. So I mean, there is wacky stuff that is occurring, right? But you get some will have like millions of these sorts of views and that, and they're the most ridiculous made up stuff by the hour. Not one word of it is factual. There's this idiot guy. He has these stories. A giant native woman comes out of woods and tells Cowboy that she's going to be the wife or else, right? So, in other words, like she's going to beat this cowboy up if he doesn't, do as she tells him, right? Sort of stuff. So, and then the next story, it'll be uh, 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 mother Bigfoot brings baby that's got a bucket stuck on its head, and how this camper guy removed it. These ridiculous, they're made up by the zillions, right? Like everything, from the poor Caroline Leave It there, right? Or Levitt, right? Made up about her to all these guys. So this scares me because he says in the end times that people will just start to not believe almost anything, right? So you won't know anymore when the news has come out. I see now every day, like, Mark Carney's is showing the U.S. is going to put war on him, right? And all this, like, this guy couldn't even, Donald Trump could fart on him and he would run away, right? Like, Canada doesn't, we don't have, like, the influences, what these shows like to make us sound like that we could hurt the U.S. We really couldn't. I mean, our population, they could absorb that and keep moving on, right? If they really wanted to, right? So that I mean, this is silly stuff, right? But they make this stuff up to amuse like the Canadian sort of patriots that Canada believes. Like I still get people down here that tell me, "Oh yeah, well we took on the U.S. before and they ran away," and that like they're talking a couple hundred years ago. Wasn't the whole U.S. country or anything? It was a handful, a couple of hundred idiots that just around New York that decided to do some kind of thing. But I mean, that's not really, you didn't. The only reason the rest of the people had no interest in taking over Canada, it was only just this handful of wackos at the time that decided to do this. So they chased them off, of course, because they had bigger numbers and whatever, right? So, I mean, these things are silly. Like in reality, right? Like they could blow the crap out of us in a second if Donald Trump wanted to be crazy, right? Like, so we really don't have the power like what and we're owned mostly by other countries, right? United States, China, and many countries. So these guys just BS you, right? Like I mean, the too patriotic stuff. Like I'm Canadian, I'm proud to be Canadian. I love it here. We don't have the problems of the gun stuff like you do over in the other countries, right? And that sort of thing like that, and a lot of things that is good here that is a little bit better in other places I've been, but then other things are terrible, right? Like so, it all. Every country has problems, right? And that sort of thing like that. But I mean, this AI stuff is getting to the point where it's like the stories. There's like another guy, like I said, he's got probably like about a couple 100,000 subscribers. So people would believe rather listen to a guy that tells you every day about 20 werewolf stories, right? That would mean that, like, just in his state alone, right? He's doing this 300 some days a year, right? And that in his state alone, that'd be like over like about 6, 7,000 sightings per year. Right? Like, I mean, come on. I mean, really? Does anybody really believe that? Right? So there is a bazillions of these channels now where there's airheads that seemingly will join up with it and they fully believe all this stuff. Like, I mean, the guy's got like a story too, like the opposite way. A midget say Bigfoot. Like, I mean, every day it's a different wacky, sort of one, right? Like, so I mean, there's some crazy stuff out here that is getting really silly, right? Like I mean, so so when you believe the Smithsonian Institution guy when they told you the San Diego giant, as for instance, right, was made of jello, yet they purchased them originally, and 8 or 9 of them all studied it before they purchased it, right? So, who would pay mass gazillions here for a jello? Right? So, there's some wacky group out there that does not want people to understand and believe that dragons existed at one time and unicorns and this, and they want you to all believe it was like a massive fable. But I mean, if you look historically, kings mentioning in their records that they owned some, they breeded them, emperors, and all this stuff. And you really believe this is all imaginary? I find silly. So, anyways, I don't know. I can't really tell you if that's a real dragon or not. But there's multi specimens around the world that are similar like this, and with these kinds of features, right? And it would be difficult to, I don't know where you would get these different body parts, right? Like, and why are you doing this? For what reason, right? Like, I mean, if they don't exist, I would think even museums hundreds of years ago would be on the more serious side about it, right? And why isn't there anywhere that you can see from thousands of years ago? Like, why the emperor guy tells you that he owns a bunch of them and he's breeding them. You don't ever see any anti against this sort of stuff. Just in the last, since 1940s and on, dragons always under imagination, right? But previous to this, you don't see any of this mentioned. So you really believe that all these cultures worldwide that tell you they fought with them, killed them, and all kinds of stuff like that, that every single time this was imagination, including these fossils here, like, I mean, these skeletons, right? Like, I mean, there's something wacko, right? So, whatever the reason, these guys just there's some wacky reason that we don't understand. But anyways, we'll continue on with next shows. There's some more sort of things like this, and continue on with this. But I wanted to show this, and as well. Now the werewolf one. I mean, you could get a bear, I guess, and stand it up and mess with its face and different things, and goofing around to make it look more like a werewolf, I suppose, right? That's so. I'm more suspect of these werewolf ones, right? However, that one that was found over, I have it on another show, this farmer guy, and it was real. I mean, these people really believed that that was a werewolf because they chopped his head off. This is their belief that you got to remove the head away from the body, right? There really is a werewolf like looking skull in there, right? That now the scientist guy tells you it's a wolf with Paget disease, yet its eyes seemingly are more like what you would expect like a baboon like creature to have. So I've always wondered in earliest times, is it feasible that besides giant wolves that existed that would are some of the werewolf phenomena, and other wacky stuff, right? But it could be too that this kind of thing it existed as well, right? Like in the earlier times, right? So there's a bunch of these different ones, right? And that I was trying to show you this. I'm going to keep looking for it, and maybe I'll be able to get on this show or not. If not, then we'll continue it on the next show there. And like I said, if you ever have any sightings, of course, please contact and gladly. I'm interested in all kinds of different sorts of phenomena and things like that. Or if you know any stuffed dragons in a museum or any kind of things like that, wood wolves, ancient statues, you name it. I want to see these things, right? Because it's just adds to the sort of whole thing that, I mean, for people to keep believing that this is all imaginary when thousands and thousands of ancient records are telling you that it isn't, and they're describing the creature, telling you what you can use their body parts for and everything. I find mind boggling that if people believe that this is all imagination. So, anyways, we'll continue on. I just wanted to finish a little bit with the walking fish because of the insane amount. This guy in the 1800s described this, and he said that it had feet, right? So, I mean, this is strange. I've yet, like I said, to see an example of this, but there's so many reports, and how many frequently are sucker to carp like, right? So, very strange. And very few of other sorts, right? One guy described it almost like a walleye of some sort, right? He said it was golden and it had big eye and sharp teeth and things like that, right? So it couldn't have been a sucker, right? But it had these legs in the back, but it didn't have front legs. Some of them have said that it had like four legs, others just two legs, right? So because I've yet to see one of these photos in the only the carp and sucker ones seem to be the most common, but there's some other ones, right? And so it's very interesting. There's a lot of strangeness to it, right? But I mean, I'm very interested in the sense that there's so many sightings, like, and the people talk like really, I don't know how to explain that, but like as if they really like fully believe all this, right? That this occurred, right? And that when you're trying to get them to agree that it's like a tiger salamander, and you describe it and everything, and they say no, and they get like upset with this, right? Well, then what do you say? You're supposed to say, right? Like, I mean, obviously a tiger salamander isn't 4 feet long, likely with golden scales on it, right? Like, or ones like that, right? So, and they're random all over, right? Like, not just one place, but the Otter River, St. Lawrence River. I've heard this story a few times, not as much, but that sort of thing, like that one out of the Rideau Canal, and so I mean, and South Dakota and some like just random places around, right? But it's very interesting anyway. So but I'll have some more of that sort of thing like that, and I'll see if I can get somebody, one of them, if I because I know the fellow that I interviewed a couple of years ago. I see him once still in a while, and that. So if I run across him, I'll get her to do a drawing of some sort of exactly what the thing looked like, right? To try and match it as best as possible. And we'll have another continued show on it. But if you do have anything like that, or, you know what I mean? Seen a fish with a big stogie in his mouth and that sort of thing like that, or the another the Trudeau Minks Lake Monster there, if he's still around, flopping. I want to hear about it. So, anyways, well, next show there we'll have some more about cats. I still have mystery items I want to cover. There's a lot of different things, but I had some of these on the back burner and I wanted to move them along. So, have a good day, and thanks for watching.